She would go down as one of the legends in our industry in sports media. Terri Hermann, Director of Operations at Bally Sports Arizona, has worked in a variety of different places. And we're going to learn about her story on the On to Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio, also a broadcaster in live events. I'm excited to have you on, Terri. I know that I've had a bunch of your colleagues on. And what does it feel like to be the one in front of the camera now? I know you do so much logistics and so many things behind. How is this going for you so far?
A little, a little nervous. I got to be honest. I'm very much used to being behind the scenes, in the wings of the theater, but not in front of the camera. So,
what does it mean to you to be behind something in a project and see it take its own wings and fly, to use a metaphor and a cliche, in that that while you might not be in front of the camera, the satisfaction that comes with pulling off big projects?
Oh, it's you hit it right on the nose. It's everything. I mean, it's how I'm wired. I love seeing something where somebody gives you a call and says, "Hey, we have this idea," and you get to build it and develop it and deliver it and see an empty parking lot. And at the end of it, it's, a crowd of cheering people. And then at the end, you put it back in the boxes and ship it all away. It's the whole process is just an amazing thing. Just giving life to something. So
how much of your journey has come as a surprise, considering how many different states that you've worked in, from going from one job to another, and to think that when you were a child that you would be moving all over the place like you have to this day?
pretty much most of it. Yeah, I thought it was going to be a ballerina or famous equestrian. So I don't know how I got into television, but it's been it's interesting. I have had to learn a lot of positivity, and sometimes you get something handed to you and you think, what is this? And I don't want to do it. And then you start working on it, and it's might be overwhelming, but you take a little bite and then another little bite, and pretty soon you're all into it and watching to see it just blossom, and you find the fun things about it. And then all of a sudden, everybody that thought, I didn't want to do that, think, hey, how come she gets to do that and I don't? So sometimes you're very lucky that way. And it's just been a total surprise. I kind of take everything as it comes, and have started to finally learn just to have as much fun with it all as I can.
What are you having the most fun with when it comes to your career?
I think just the process of learning, developing, meeting new people. I love walking into something and, okay, I don't maybe know everything about this, but there's a really smart person over in the corner. I'm going to go talk to them and bring them in. Things that are, it's just that love of learning that's kind of taken me through everything so far in the career.
How far back can you trace back that love of learning? Like when you're in
Uh-huh.
grade school, like what are you so interested in that spawns that curiosity that I feel like, in listening to you talk, Terri, has sort of made its way and evolved into everything you're doing work endeavors wise?
I was a avid reader as a child. My mother always told the story of, lights out, I'd be under the covers with a flashlight. Um, One time she said she found me standing on a bookcase in the closet, reading underneath the closet light, so that they wouldn't know that I was up still awake and reading, and just learning. And I had a mother that said, you're gonna, you're gonna learn, you're gonna go to school, you're gonna make, you're gonna be a career person. So that's what I did from the youngest age. They couldn't keep books out of my hands. I was reading ahead of everybody else's grade in the grade level. So it was a process, I think, from back then. But it was always on the English side. It was always horrible on math and science. So learning technical stuff has been a whole process. Like I said, find the smart person in the room and let them teach you about how you do it.
How much credit do you give yourself for making that transformation and knowing like, okay, I'm really good at English, but now I'm learning kind of tech, math, science, kind of physics, whatever you want to call it, technology, and to be able to do that when maybe beforehand you didn't think you could?
Sometimes I'm still surprised. I'll have a conversation with somebody and they say, yeah, we want to bring you into this because, of all your technical experience. And I kind of want to look over my shoulder and see who they're talking to. But it's amazed me, to be honest, when you learn something and you learn a little bit more. I always like to say, I know it just enough to be dangerous. I could talk to somebody about this technical thing, but I can't pick up the tool and actually use it, but I know how to get the tool they need into their hands so they can use it. And I think that's more of my job in this industry than anything else, is getting the tools into the hands of the people that know how to use them so that everything looks good when we get it together.
When I hear you talking about reading and growing up as a child and loving reading, I think about what that must have done as far as like you're dreaming big, you're reading these stories and thinking about what it would be like and you were in these situations. What kind of dreamer do you have to be with what you're doing now? Because there's a lot of probably projects and events put together where you've got to be really creative about how you put it all together. Maybe it hasn't been done before and you have to just simply find a way.
A lot of times it's all about just find a way to do it. You step back and look at that project. Some of it is, when you get to a certain point, some of it's routine, but only because you've done it so many times. You have to remember that it's not routine to somebody who's only done it once or twice. And teaching in the next generation what that is. Pick up this tool, but they don't know what it is. They just picked it up because you told them to. But there are still challenges that come up. I mean, that's part of what we do. You have something that, as a project that normally you would go at it from A to B, but there's some reason that there's a wall in between, and you have to think creatively. Well, if we can't do it the way we've always done it, how do we still get this done? So if we can't park a truck here, can we put a fly pack in a control room or in a storage room somewhere? If we can't have a fiber, and where do we find a satellite that we can hit? Things like that. The building doesn't want us to bring in sandwiches, do we go stand out on the sidewalk and eat soup? Whatever kind of works, because there so much in this business is there's an end product and you have to achieve it. So a lot of times you have to think outside the box or around the box or under the box in order to get there, because at the end of the day, you still need to achieve that goal. So they force you to be creative, which you slap yourself in the head and think, this is hard. And then you figure it out.
Speaking of figuring it out, how about putting on a broadcast on an aircraft carrier? How in the world did you figure that out?
That was 2011. That was a really special event. It was, there were so many things. There were so many talented people that were involved in that event. And we started it just like anything else. And then you talk to those folks that are the stakeholders, the military, the people that were the event people that were staging the event so that we could put the game on. And you start figuring out what's different. There's a tide. So the tide goes up and down. So maybe you need to have, 12 feet more in your cable. Wow. So that when the tide's in and the ship rises, you're not pulling all your patches out from the truck. And when the tide lowers, you're not right with all these. So things like that. it's kind of like it's all, I used to say television is kind of agnostic. You have all of these challenges. Doesn't matter if it's on an aircraft carrier, in a hangar, or in a gym. You still have to run all the cables and put the cameras out and make audio and feed the crew and make sure everybody gets there and has a credential around their neck so they can get put on, can get on the ship. So you think, I like to break it down in those terms. Doesn't matter how big or how small it is. And then kind of once everything's in place, you can step back and go, we just did something really, really neat.
When you have that feeling of accomplishment that you're talking about right there, and you figure things out and you solve problems, how does that enhance your confidence outside of work? Just to know, hey, I'm doing all these cool things and I'm getting it done. But then how do you find that the confidence you feel from pulling off these tasks actually influences just your general sense of life and how you go about it and your sense of accomplishment?
It's very interesting to me. I used to watch some of those shows where they would, like The Apprentice or whatever, in the early days of television, and they'd throw something at these people that was like hard. Like, oh no, at the last minute your talent quit. And it's like, nobody from television production would ever, like, we'd never get off the show, because everybody's like, that always happens. Oh no, the caterer didn't show up. Great. What would happen next? Well, you go get another caterer. You take those skills into real life. One time I was working with we had a side saddle group when I lived in New Jersey, and we were doing a fundraiser, and I was in charge of the wine, and the question kept coming: is it, have you got the stuff yet? Have you bought the stuff yet? It's like a week away. It's like 2 weeks away. I have plenty of time to get all that stuff done. You just know it's organized, your timeline, and it's not like a big rush because you are so used to how long stuff takes. But you do kind of tend to find that, you show up at the family gatherings and all of a sudden you've organized the cousins, the brothers, the sisters, everybody's going someplace else. And it's like, you're the organizer, like, nope, you go there, do this. And then everybody's happy. So you get to be the bossy one sometimes.
It's got to be hard to turn that off, especially considering how long hours you're working, putting on events. I mean, I feel that that's a common normal trait when you're so ingrained in a business that is so energy consuming and time consuming. It must be, Terri, hard to sort of separate yourself. And when you can, what does that look like? How are you able to do that? Give yourself some time to sort of relax, if that's even a word allowable in this business, or to even reflect.
It is hard to turn it off. One of my favorite memories was back when I lived in Florida, when I'd get outside of my little Disney and bubble with all the folks I worked with, and you'd go out with people that didn't have any idea how to do television. And what do you do for a living? Oh, I work in I do this. And they weren't impressed because it was just a job to them. It wasn't like, oh, you do television. It was just like, yeah, you do, great, I'm an accountant. And some of that kind of takes the wind out of your sails a little bit. It takes you down just that little bit of a notch. It's like, oh, I don't have to be running around, and I can relax in this situation, in this group of people. I don't have to be the organizer. Sometimes it's just, I get a craving for a hammock and laying by the water with a good book. And during the pandemic, that was my biggest craving, was I just want to lay in a hammock with an actual paper book and just listen to the water go by. And that's how you just really disconnect.
What is the difference between the books you were reading generally as a child when you were hiding from your mom and trying to stay up and read longer than past your bedtime, to what you're reading now and what you did on hammocks, and yeah, the difference between those two.
Oh, well, beyond see see Jane run Jane run when I was a kid. Tolkien, all the fantasy novels. I was a Dungeons and Dragons fantasy girl growing up. Nowadays, I like historical. Book I'm reading right now is The Desert Smells Like Rain, because now that I'm in Arizona, I'd like to find out about the surroundings and what's out there. So the Weather Channel, which is my other secret passion, which is always on, one of their talent mentioned that book. So it's like I had to go and find it and read it. So yeah, I think as you get, I think some of the, you read through your years, you kind of run out of the, yeah, I've read that story with a different name. The character had a different name, but it was the same story with some books that come along. But I also like to call, like bubblegum books. There are some books that's just like, I'm just going to read this. Doesn't have to be educational. It's just fun. I might know how it's going to turn out. But last summer was a book where the guy in it is a bookseller in Paris, which is my other passion, and lives on a barge and drops the lines from the barge and goes down the Seine in search of his former love. And it was the perfect summer read, laying in a hammock.
Sounds like a future movie that, if it hasn't happened already, that would be an interesting movie. Hey, so if you, to sort of turn this around, if you were to write a book, maybe you have, but if this book was about yourself, in no way do I mean to put you on the spot, but what would the title be of what you would try to get across to people about your life, what you've done, your outlook on life, and your thoughts on what that might be like? And it doesn't have to come out perfectly right now, but just thinking about that.
Ugh. Probably something like, don't take it all so seriously. Learn from your mistakes and don't take it all so seriously. When you're young, you're very intense because you have to get ahead. And I think sometimes you burn bridges because you're so focused and so driven to get where you want to go. And you look back and you think, wow, if I had just been softer, or if I had thought a moment longer, if I hadn't just been so intense and laughed a little bit more, maybe it wouldn't have been as much friction, or it would have had a different outcome. So not taking it so seriously, I think, is a good plan.
Well, Terri, as we wrap up this conversation, those words are just like gold. I'm a lot of this stuff that you're saying not only can be applied to those in our business, but to anybody. I really feel like that. And your storytelling, phenomenal. I love learning about your book reading habits and the way in which you didn't really think you would get into this business. And what I see is this constant theme of is you surprising yourself through this process. But I have a feeling that if I were to talk to your coworkers, that they would tell me that your talent is no surprise to them. Terri Hermann with Bally Sports Arizona, Director of Operations. I'm Bryan Fenley. Thanks so much for doing this. Really, really enjoyed this thoughtful conversation.
And thank you very much. It was an honor to be able to participate.